Hey, BillO'Reilly.com premium members, welcome to the No Spin News, Thursday, September 7th, 2017. Pretty interesting news day today. A lot of culture war stuff in the air. But we'll begin with politics. As you may know, President Trump said to the Democrats, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, look, I'll extend the debt limit till December with no strings attached if you just get the Harvey $8 billion done. And the deal was consummated. So it was a vote today, 83-17 in the Senate, 17 conservative Republicans. They want any kind of debt decisions to be tied into cutbacks, spending cutbacks. Donald Trump's not really interested in that. But here's where you come in, you, the American citizen. What Trump is doing is basically what they call clearing the table for tax reform. Now, I've told you this and told you this and told you this. Donald Trump's administration hinges on getting tax reform passed. To him, the debt ceiling is an annoyance. All right, he wanted the money for Texas. He got the money for Texas. So if he has to extend the debt ceiling for 3 months, he's going to do it. If he has to extend it for a year, he'll do it. Because he wants the tax cut. Because he knows, and so does General Kelly, the chief of staff, and so does Mike Pence, the vice president, that if the Trump administration can get tax relief for you, the American making, less than $100,000 a year, there's a good chance Donald Trump will win re-election. If he cannot do that, toast. That's what this is all about. So the conservatives in Congress who are angry are being short-sighted vis-a-vis their own party. So, people aren't going to care about the debt ceiling. They should, but they're not going to. They're going to be concerned about how much money they're taking home from their jobs. All right? So that's why that happened. And Trump did the smart thing politically. Not ideologically, politically. And we'll all go back to it. $20 trillion debt. Democrats don't care. It's going to be a big issue, but it's not a big issue for most Americans now. Okay, Irma, look, whenever you have a destructive storm, you saw the pictures. So people lose their homes and their cars and sometimes their lives. What are you going to do? The media hype and hype and hype and hype and hype. And just saying prayers. This Irma thing turns north, goes out to sea, and we don't have to suffer any more than we've suffered already with Harvey. And then there's another Hurricane Jose. So it's a bad hurricane season. Nothing anybody can do about it. They're acts of God. If you're a CNN viewer, it's global warming, whatever. They're happening. Seems the government, is in a position to at least respond quickly. And that's really all we can ask. All right, now, I've told you this story the last 2 days. It is a very, very compelling story and something that I've been pounding on the table for 15 years. How individual Americans have to behave to succeed. So, the University of Pennsylvania, which is an Ivy League school, a professor there named Amy Wax wrote an op-ed in the Philadelphia Inquirer newspaper with a man named Larry Alexander, who teaches law at the University of San Diego. Two of them wrote it. Basically, the op-ed said that young Americans will succeed if they live by, quote-unquote, bourgeois values. That is, hard work, self-discipline, waiting until marriage to have children, and obeying traditional tenets. Be honest, all of that. Defer divorce until the kids are older. All of that comes into their op-ed. Now, Professor Alexander at San Diego, he didn't take a lot of heat. But Amy Wax at UPenn, getting hammered by graduate employees and other teachers. Okay? They blasted her as being, quote unquote, hateful and regressive for writing this op ed. Now, the grievance industry in America, and you know people like this, they don't have to be people of color, they can be white people who are looking for grievance to be offended every single day, who blame their life circumstance on others. Oh, I don't get a fair shot. Oh, this, that, and the other thing. This industry, excuse me, the grievance industry has now overwhelmed this country. There are legitimate grievances. There are. We're not a perfect place. But if you're going to tell a child that it's society's fault that he is doing badly in school, if you're going to have children and you don't pay attention to them, if you're a father and you abandon them, the structure of our society collapses. And in a hyper-competitive capitalistic world in which we live, you can't compete. I said it yesterday. If you're covered with tattoos, if you can't speak the English language, if you can't write a sentence, how are you going to earn a good living? How? If you have no discipline in your life, if you smoke pot every day, if you drink a quart of gin every day, how are you going to do it? When jobs that were plentiful 30 years ago, like assembly line, things like that, they're gone. You got to know how to do something. Now, if you're a plumber, you can make $100K. You can paint houses, you can make good money. All right? If you can do something that Americans need, you'll prosper. And you don't have to be Socrates. But if you are a ne'er-do-well, if you have no education and don't care about it, if you have no parental guidance, if your school stinks and they don't care about you at all, and they promote you just to get you the hell out of there, you're going to fail. And you're going to have a terrible life. That's what this was about. Telling the truth to younger Americans. There's things you have to do. And the media won't tell you that. The PC people won't tell you that. And then if I write it, the grievance industry attacks me. How many times have I been called a racist because I call for African Americans or Hispanic Americans or whatever group, to seize control of your own neighborhoods, to get the bad guys out, to cooperate with the police, to go down and to tell your school board, hey, this isn't working, this school. You got to have discipline in the school. I say that, I'm a racist. Now, somebody who's followed this very closely and who knows Amy Wax is Heather Mac Donald from the Manhattan Institute in New York City. You may have seen Ms. Mac Donald on A Factor. I've used her a number of times. She's an expert in policing, in crime, and in social mores. Now, she, again, knows Amy Wax. So, Heather, thanks for coming in. How is Professor Wax doing under this incredible assault?
Well, Amy Wax is one of the most courageous people out there, and there's no way she's going to be browbeaten into silence. She's committed to her views. She knows they're right. The problem is that very few faculty members have the courage that she does. And so she's being made an example of what happens when you dare question the cult of victimhood and say that actually individuals have responsibility for their own lives.
How is she absorbing the day-to-day criticism because she sees these people who are doing this? I mean, is she upset? I mean, I agree that she's not going to silence her, but the emotional toll it takes is, pretty horrifying in some cases.
Well, it is. We in the commentariat are not surrounded necessarily by the type of uniform leftism that exists on a campus today, and there's no getting away from it. Half of the UPenn law faculty signed a letter denouncing her and asking students to come forward with examples of the bias they've experienced. This was a thinly veiled request for students to come forward with examples of wax allegedly being biased, which is, of course, a completely ridiculous accusation. But as I say, Amy is very, very tough, and if she's experiencing some sort of inner turmoil, she's certainly not showing it.
She has tenure, right? She's protected?
Yes, absolutely. And
Okay.
this faculty letter against her said, well, of course she has tenure, so she's protected, implying that if she hadn't had tenure yet, then her job would rightly be vulnerable.
But they want that. I believe that these
Yeah.
far left PC college people, they like to get her off the campus, fire her, make an
Yes.
example of her. They don't want
Oh,
opposing points of view. They don't want debate.
no, of course not. No, they absolutely want her out. And short of, with tenure, they can't fire her, but what's at stake now, there's a movement to prohibit her from teaching mandatory first-year courses. She teaches civil procedure, which is a first-year mandatory law course. And so there's a petition going around to prevent her from doing that, because the idea is that for a minority student to be in her classroom now would simply be a life-threatening
A
experience.
life-threatening experience. Okay, now have you ever analyzed why intelligent people have now gone so insanely left? It used to be they were there, but there were some opposing points of view. Now, you can't even wear a Halloween costume at Yale if you dress up like a Mexican, all right? Because you're threatening Mexican American students or whatever. It's gone so far crazy. Have you pinpointed why that has happened?
Well, I'm not sure this gets to the why. This is still somewhat descriptive, but what has been going on is that for the last 30 years, sadly out of sight of the public, the university has been beavering away at perfecting this racial victimology, at coming out with a discourse that says that the predominant causal factor in American life is white, patriarchal, racism, sexism, homophobia, and everybody who is not a heterosexual, white male, able-bodied is fundamentally and perpetually oppressed. Those ideas now are spreading into society, carried by graduates of the university, aped by the media. Why this is going on at this particular moment, I don't know. I mean, because one of the big drivers here, the divide, as you've suggested, Bill, in your opening remarks and in your years in the broadcast media, the divide between the so-called progressive and a more mainstream or conservative, whatever, commonsensical view is what your attitude is towards individual behavior. And the left refuses to acknowledge that behavior is what's determining, by and large, social outcomes. They believe instead we have to look at structural inequality, and it is taboo to talk about precisely the dysfunctional behaviors that you've listed: the drug taking, the alcohol, having children out of wedlock, dropping out of school, getting involved in gangs. All of that is kept off stage. Why that is, we had the 60s countercultural revolution, embracing anti-authoritarianism, embracing, as Wax and Alexander write, this adolescent wish fulfillment fantasy. The elites, by and large, are still covertly living bourgeois values, but the official policy, philosophy of society is, people should be free to pursue hedonistic pursuits.
Okay, I wish she had used the word traditional values instead of bourgeois. Bourgeois is confusing to a lot of people. But I think that you basically have a structure now where the media has allied itself with the progressive movement. So that if you come out and you say, the country's bad, I'm not standing for the national anthem, I'm not going to obey the police, I'm going to do what I want and I don't care, then the media says, fine. All right? If you get arrested or fired or something bad happens to you, then you're oppressed. Your behavior led to it, but you're oppressed because the media, which really defines a lot of this stuff, is now so far left and so far into the progressive camp. All right? That's why this story wasn't covered, Heather. You didn't see this on cable news because it's very hard to criticize what Amy Wax and the other professor is saying. That if you do certain traditional things, obey the law, work hard, get educated, you'll succeed. If you don't, odds are you will not succeed. You can't argue with that. So the progressives want to ignore all this and allow the grievance industry and the PC mongers to destroy anyone who would tell the truth. And that is a real sea change in this country.
Well, and I would say that it does stem from the 1960s, where you had the rise of youth culture. You had a society, American economy, that was so wealthy, it had made adolescents consumers for the first time in human history. It separated them from their parents. It gave them purchasing power. You had then other industries catering to adolescents. The rock music. They now were in the market, and they had power like nothing before, and they felt themselves as these, self-righteous rebels rebelling against American injustice. And that then, you're right, became the elite establishment view, and the media, with Watergate, embraced an oppositional culture that was really a new thing in human history for the elites and the establishment to gain their status by claiming that they were the clairvoyants who saw how racist and oppressive America was.
Yeah, and it was dormant for a while, but now it is back with a vengeance, and the vengeance is hurting the children. It's hurting these poor kids because they don't know any better. They're being told that they're victims, all right? And they're being told they're victims across the board, and that they need a safe space, and that they shouldn't tolerate other points of view or even consider other points of view at all, okay? That this is a bad country, and we have to make it better by silencing anybody who thinks it's not a bad country. That's where we are. Heather, thanks very much. We appreciate it. Scary situation. It is, and it's getting worse. I did an interview today with Breitbart about killing England, and a lot of that was on how this country is changing for the worse, that discourse and debate isn't tolerated, that if you have a dissenting point of view, you're a racist or a sexist or a homophobe or whatever it may be, you're demonized and you're a bad, bad person. If you voted for Trump, you're a bad person, okay? So that's where we are now, and it's really, really getting to a point where it's just crazy. All right, there's a new poll out. Rasmussen Daily Tracking has Donald Trump's approval at 45%, disapproval at 55%, job performance. But in a poll from NBC, Trump outpolls Hillary Clinton. I think it's 36% think that Donald Trump is okay. It's not a job performance. It's can you tolerate him? 36% yes. Only 31% can tolerate Hillary Clinton. It just amused me. All right. Now, if Trump, as I said, at top gets tax cuts passed, that approval rating goes up 10. And finally, there has been a rather dramatic crime fall in this country. And I don't really know why. Usually I know, or I think I know. I'm a big mouth, all right? But the crime rate in America is set this year to be the second lowest in history. Everything's falling. Here in New York City, we're down about 300 murders a year. You know, and Chicago's still out of control, but in big cities like New York with a lot of violence, it's going down, down, down. And I don't, with the drug use going up, particularly heroin and, opioids where you gotta get money, okay, and usually that drives street crime. Crime's going down. It's gotta have something to do with the policing, the organizational capacities, cameras everywhere now, able to flood the zone where the crimes are. But you would think in an uncivil society, and we are uncivil to each other, there's a cultural civil war, that would lead to more violence, but it's not. It's not. So if any of you have theories, because this is a bright audience, about why crime in America is falling, I want to hear them, and we'll deal with that next time around. All right, let's get to the mail. Pat in Louisville, Kentucky. DACA is a tough decision. I keep hearing about kids will suffer, and it's true. Kids have always suffered because of their parents' choices. We have children who are suffering every day because of drug-addicted parents. I believe if these illegal aliens are here working, speak English, law-abiding, we should let them stay. However, make it clear in the future will not be tolerated. Some kind of law will be passed to help the dreamers. And attached to that law will be more stringent immigration standards, whether it be the wall or whatever. That's the compromise that's going to happen. But I agree it should happen. There's got to be a compromise here. Jesse Reese, Greeley, Colorado, up in the northern part of the state. Bill, if former President Obama overstepped his executive authority when he created the DACA program 5 years ago, why wasn't action taken at a time? Why all a protest now? Because basically there was no organized attempt to take it to the Supreme Court, to take the executive action that President Obama made a new immigration law to the Supreme Court. Now, today, if it goes to the Supreme Court rules that the president's executive order is unconstitutional. No question. No question. It would be maybe 5-4. The 4 liberal judges, they're never going to go by the Constitution. They don't do that. But that's what happened. You didn't have an organized attempt to get it to the Supreme Court, and I don't know why. Could have. Ronald Kopke, South Bend, Indiana, home of Notre Dame. Thanks, Bill, for your comments on DACA. I didn't like the unconstitutional way President Obama handled things. I must admit your thought process on the subject makes sense. I don't want to see these people get ahead, though, of decent people who are following the rules to get into this country. You know what? There's always going to be unfairness, Ron, always. And it's a little unfair. But it's not the kid's fault who was brought here. So you got to keep that in mind. Christine Harrington, Indianapolis. Bill, I owe you an apology. During the election, I thought you had a negative influence reporting on Donald Trump. So I stopped watching you. Now I've become around and have accepted Trump as president. I realize you were right. So I sought you out because I cannot stand to watch TV news any longer. I became a BillO'Reilly.com premium member and love it. Please forgive me. Hey, Christine, look, I'm going to be fair. And that means I'm going to criticize all politicians at certain times. And I'm glad you thought about it. And I'm glad you're a premium member because you're going to get it fair here. And if you think I'm unfair, let me know. I'm reasonable. I'll consider it. David Carmichael, California. Bill, are you aware of any effort by the Justice Department to open their own investigation on the shooting of Miss Damon by Officer Noor in Minneapolis? That can't happen. The feds have no jurisdiction. It's a local crime. If it were a hate crime or a civil rights action, they could. But because Miss Damon is white, there's no reason for the feds to go in. I think if the officer isn't held to any account, Officer Noor, who shot this young woman, and we don't know why, she's unarmed, called 911, did everything right, then you might see some kind of federal investigation under some pretense, but not now. Diane Fogel, Houston. I value your opinion and wonder what you think about traveling to Korea and Japan right now. My daughter and husband are leaving on Saturday for Seoul and then Tokyo. Not a great time to go to Seoul and Tokyo, but I wouldn't postpone. You know, Houston, you got through the floods, you'll get through this. Tokyo, there'd be no problem. Seoul, a lot of disruption in Seoul. Might be an educational experience. They've got to be careful. I hope they have a good hotel booked from and to and from the airport. But I wouldn't cancel if it were me. Jim Frisella, Barnevald, New York. I've read all the Killing books, but I knew Killing the Rising Sun would be the most emotional. My father was seriously wounded on Okinawa. A tin of tobacco in his left breast pocket deflected the shrapnel, or he would likely have died. 2 months later, when he was released from the military hospital, he started to prepare to join the forces that would invade mainland Japan, where he would have been a casualty. Then the bomb dropped. I sometimes humorously state I owe my existence to smoking and nuclear bombs. Not same thing with me on the nuke. I never smoked, but I'm glad your dad survived Okinawa. Mel Gibson made an amazing movie about it. And then we write about Okinawa, the battle in Killing the Rising Sun, one of the most horrific things you can imagine. Donald Gagan, Manchester, New Hampshire. When I go for my daily walk in the woods, I'm faced with the option of listening to Mozart or the O'Reilly podcast. I used to always listen to Mozart, but since signing up as a premium member, I've switched to the podcast. Please forgive me, Amadeus. Hey, Don, you're a Renaissance man, walking in the woods, getting that fresh air in New Hampshire, beautiful place in the autumn, no better place to be. Now you listen to podcasts, not only are you getting the fresh air and exercise, but you're learning. Now, Mozart, I like Mozart. Not as much as you do, but I understand the art there. But the podcast is keeping you in shape mentally. Michael, Neptune Beach, Florida. Bill, opinion analysis based on facts and knowledge, skills and experience. How rare and novel, especially coming out of an Ivy League university. He's talking about me. Loved your scandal erupts over the promotion of bourgeois behavior segment, especially after enjoying old school life in the same lane. With the insanity of the world around me, including most of my family and friends, it's good to refresh my hope with your daily analysis and reporting. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. We're trying here to be sane. And Breitbart asked me today, do I think it's over for America culturally in the culture war? And I don't think it's over. Miller does. A lot of people do. I know a lot of you have family members and friends who have, gone to the left-wing dark side. Not liberal. Nothing wrong with being liberal. But far-left progressive, dark side. But a charismatic leader in the traditional core, if that person emerges, they will change the balance. They could. Donald Trump, not so interested in a culture war. He's more of an economy guy, which we need. That's why he was elected. Okay? But a culture warrior combining with economic vision, that could be the ticket. And finally, Marilyn Fromling, Strongsville, Ohio. Love the podcast. Listen every night. However, if you keep saying Miller and I in lieu of the correct Miller and me, I'm going to have to suggest the next title of your book be Killing Grammar. Marilyn, I do a half hour for you every day, right? Half hour? It's all off the top of my head. No teleprompter, no script, none of that. I have an outline. Here's the outline on a regular pad that you have. So I know the order, I know what I'm going to go, but I don't really know exactly how I'm going to phrase it. So once in a while, there will be a grammatical error. Because I'm thinking as I'm speaking. I'm thinking. So you can't be perfect. All right? Once in a while. But I am aware of the grammatical rules. When you end a sentence, it's me. when you're actively doing something, it's I. I'm sorry I said Miller and I, but let me give it another shot. Miller and I will be, we're going to be doing something, will be in Baltimore September 22nd at the Royal Farms Arena. We want to see everybody there. That's coming up 10 days away. Then the next night, Tampa, Florida. You guys, I hope you'll be dry there on Saturday, September 23rd. Then in December, early Christmas present. Come on. Vegas, Caesars Palace, almost sold out. You got to get in there quick. And Anaheim, California at the Honda Center, huge show on Saturday, December 16th. We'll link you right to the box offices on BillO'Reilly.com. So, you guys are the best. Remember, Killing England comes out on September 19th. That's coming up fast, and you're going to love it. You order it here, get 50% off any of the other Killing books, okay? But you buy it in advance, you'll get it first. And then our kids' books, Day the War Went Nuclear, Hitler's Last Slaves, all of them, 50% off to celebrate the urchins going back.